Good evening, and thanks for joining us for our special streaming coverage of the Sutton Saga. I'm Margot Gray. The remaining residents at the Sutton Apartments in Madison will be moved out of their homes by the end of this week after days without water. We counted. It's 14 days, 2 weeks solid without running water. Madison Utilities disconnected water service to the complex on Shelton Road after the apartment owners failed to pay tens of thousands of dollars owed for the water bill. Keep in mind, this was after residents had already paid rent, which water is included. So today our cameras went back out to Sutton, and we can see the signs of a hurried exodus. Some furniture was in the dumpsters already. Building Church is organizing volunteer efforts to help move remaining residents and is asking for community assistance tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, of course. The goal is to complete all of the moves as soon as possible before freezing temperatures move into our area. WAFF 48 News is on your side tonight, highlighting some of our reporting on this crisis, and hopefully in this time we can also answer some of your other pressing questions that come up with tenant-landlord issues around the valley all the time. Here's a look at how we got to this point.
Madison Utilities confirmed to me that the residents here at the Sutton Apartments have not had water since Thursday, all because the apartment management has not paid the bill. Residents told me that not only were they not warned that this was going to happen, they've been left to fend entirely for themselves.
The last several days have been hell. It's real frustrating.
Residents right here at the Sutton Apartments off Shelton Road have been without any running water for the past 6 days. To make matters even worse, the apartment management has been virtually impossible to contact, leaving many of these residents and the utility company desperate for answers. No water for 7 days will not only have you frustrated, but also looking for options, and in this case, legal ones.
What's happening over at the Sutton is pretty horrible.
8 days after the water turned off here at the Sutton Apartments, residents learned that it would never get turned back on. This wasn't a surprise to them, but it was still a wake-up call that they needed to find a new place to live, and fast. Madison Utilities told me after this property owner, Lurin, didn't pay their water bill for a week, they needed to shut down the account. General Manager Emery DeBoard told me they wish they could turn the water back on, but the unpaid bill leaves them tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and he says it's against their policy to do so. Yvette Lunday, one of the residents here, is trying to rally the 24 residents up to find a new home.
Without having any water, and we have to move, this is a disaster for us at this moment, and I hope that this community treats it like that and come together and help us like that.
Every single day, I've been following the water saga here at the Sutton Apartments. As the first reporter here, I saw the initial frustrations of the residents turn into an absolute nightmare after they went 9 days without any running water. But for the first woman I interviewed, her nightmare may finally be over. Yvette Lunday and her adult son Marcus are officially moving out of their apartment tonight.
All right, so let's jump forward because that was 9 days without water. We're now at 14 days. I want to go out live to 48 reporter Noah Cowell at the Sutton Apartments, who first broke this story, followed it for days. Noah, you've been there with those victims, those residents every day without that running water, and some of their stories just heartbreaking, like Yvette, and where she's gotten to today. Can you kind of update us on where she is?
Exactly, Margot. Well, I'll just start from the beginning. So I actually came here when the water had already been off for 4 days. So that was the beginning of last week, and we had no idea how serious this issue was until I got here and I actually talked to Yvette. Now, she actually was taking care of and is still taking care of her 38-year-old son, Marcus, who is in kidney failure and has been undergoing dialysis treatments. When I actually went into her home, I saw that she had dozens upon dozens of gallons of water in there, and that was because they just couldn't take showers. They couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, they couldn't cook or have actual drinking water without being prepared like that. And it seems so hopeless because they were just banking on the fact that the property owners would finally get the water bill paid, but they didn't hear anything from them. And that just meant that also her son couldn't take any showers for over 10 days before they were finally able to get some help recently, and they were able to get into a hotel temporarily before they actually find a permanent place to stay, which they've yet to fully do so.
So that's bottles of water that they're having to shell out money for that they didn't anticipate. Noah, you even solicited water donations for the residents from area community members, and you've seen that community rally around them. Tell me about the outpouring you've seen of support.
Well, Margot, actually, in the first couple days when I was covering this story, I don't think it truly actually reached all of these local organizations. And so that's what I did, was actually go out to Publix and Kroger, and I actually asked them, I was like, hey, there are some people who are in dire need here of just some water. I mean, it's just as simple as that. People take it for granted. And Publix and Kroger, they were like, okay, well, we'll just give you some cases of water right here. I believe it was 18 combined cases they gave to me. I reached out to the Red Cross. They were able to get one gen away to come here, and that's kind of what started the ball rolling. We had a bunch of other people come out here. Building Church announced with the city of Madison that they set up a fund to be able to get temporary housing for all these individuals. I mean, one of the employees here who was kind of stuck in this situation, she had her husband coming here to bring cases of water. Champy's right down the street was giving food and water. It's once everyone truly realized the situation here, you could kind of see what Madison is all about, and that's what the leaders were kind of reiterating, is that once they realize all these people just need a little bit of help just to show that they aren't alone, which is kind of how they felt, that's really when we started to see everything coming in, and these people have been helped so much in the past week alone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've had almost daily conversations with Madison Utilities, and this whole situation was unprecedented for them too. And a lot of folks started to ask, why can't you just turn the water back on? Talk about the policy and the fact that they even had discussions about this whole situation this morning.
Margot, I've been in a lot of conversations with General Manager Emery DeBoard, and I went to him probably the middle of last week, and he said that they really wanted to help and that this isn't what they see, really haven't seen anything like this in the past decade, where the property owner didn't pay their water bill. I believe they actually gave a check that was insufficient funds and it just bounced back, and they completely lost connection with them, and they've really never seen anything quite like that. And so when I asked them, well, why can't you just kind of take the hit here and put the water back on for these people? They really need it. They actually said it's against their policy. He had been talking to members of their board, and they just couldn't do that. They were already tens of thousands of dollars in debt. I believe it was $30,000 that this property owner did not pay, and they just completely ghosted them essentially. Because they were already in that debt, they couldn't fully actually turn it back on. It was against their policy. It would lead to many of the ratepayers throughout Madison actually having to pay an increased price for that. And as you mentioned as well, they did have a meeting this morning, and I reached out to them and I said, well, once these people move to new apartments, they're going to have to put down new deposits to actually afford being able to have running water again. And I asked if they were actually going to help the residents with that, and they said as much as they would like to, as much as this is an unfortunate circumstance and situation, they couldn't do that because it just wouldn't be fair to the rest of the residents who are actually paying for their utility services. And so it kind of seems like they wanted to help, but they were pretty rigid on that and were sticking with their policies there.
Hands tied in that situation, but I am thankful that you have been following this situation from start to finish, and you will continue to do so. You've done a lot of legwork trying to piece together and help these folks, because a lot of attention wasn't on the Sutton apartment debacle saga that we're calling it until you started doing reporting on it. So thank you, Noah Cowell, for that story. Okay, so now the Sutton is owned by Lauren Real Estate Properties. We've been looking into this company for days now. This company based in Texas. Residents at the Sutton say they haven't been able to even reach the company. They've only been getting sporadic text messages from property owners and management, and we haven't gotten a hold of them either. Our efforts included asking our NBC sister station all the way in Dallas to physically go to their home office, their location, and they too were not able to make contact. So we started digging. And that's where I want to bring in WAFF 48 investigative reporter Nick Ballinger. Nick, you've been searching property tax records as well as digging into court records, trying to put pieces together and information. What is your search revealing?
Well, Margot, it appears that the Sutton in Madison isn't even the only apartment complex in the area that's facing these troubles. This behind me is the Flats at Redstone off of Gulf Road in Huntsville, and it's owned by the same company that owns the Sutton. It's Lurin Real Estate Properties out of Dallas, and this building is now the target of a new lawsuit from the city of Huntsville, and let me show you why. You can see it behind me. There's no fence on this property. The lawsuit claims it sat abandoned for 2 years, but look at that door wide open. Anyone could just walk right in, and then you've got all this overgrown grass here, and then if you look up at this deteriorating facade, that's why the lawsuit is claiming that this is a public nuisance, and there's more lawsuits like this all over the country.
8 dry and desperate days for residents at the Sutton Apartments in Madison began when ownership didn't pay the water bill. The curtain on that owner, Lurin Real Estate Holdings out of Dallas, is now being pulled back. Jessica Harden is a real estate reporter out of Dallas and has been following Lurin for about a year.
It had followed this trend that I had been covering in Texas. The thing that was so interesting to me is that I had investors starting to reach out to me.
According to Lurin's website, it owns 46 properties around the country. As of Wednesday, the website claimed it owns 4 apartment complexes in the area, including the Sutton. But property tax records show it sold the Onyx and the Beacon late last year, leaving the Flats at Redstone on Gulf Road in Huntsville. That's now the target of a Huntsville lawsuit.
You're seeing lawsuits from lenders who are saying that he hasn't paid, and then you're also seeing lawsuits from municipalities, like in the Huntsville case.
The suit claims after sitting abandoned for 2 years, the building has now become a public nuisance with overgrown grass, holes in the fence, and a deteriorating building. The city wants to force its sale. This lawsuit isn't all. We've discovered multiple lawsuits totaling millions of dollars all across the country in places like Texas, Florida, New York, and of course, Huntsville. Suits claim Lurin defaulted on $77 million in loans out of Dallas, $270 million in loans out of Florida, and a New York judge ordered Lurin and its owner, John Venetos, to pay $20 million to a lender in Tampa. I've called Lurin every business day for the past week.
Thanks for calling Lurin Capital.
But no response. Our sister station in Dallas even went to Lurin headquarters, but they were told Lurin moved out.
The person you are trying to reach is currently unavailable,
leaving us, lenders, and residents in the dark.
The people who are suffering the most are the folks, many of them low-income folks, living in these properties that have just been, left to completely fall apart.
And I do want to add, just before we came back on the air right then, me and my photographer Storm heard something coming from the apartment complex. A possum actually came down the stairs and walked right into that open door. So it can really show you the condition of these apartments. But a lot of these lawsuits are still active, and I'm going to continue following them as this story develops. Margot?
Well, Nick, tell me more about Lurin Real Estate Holdings. Why buy all these properties across the country to begin with?
Well, Margo, real estate experts tell me that this is a common trend as of recently. Companies will buy apartment complexes like the Flats at Redstone that are old and worn down, and they'll fix them up and then raise the rents and eventually sell them to a different company for profit, obviously. But when interest rates rose like they did in the last few years, it can really put companies like Lurin in a financial bind, and that appears to be what happened here. Reporting live in Huntsville, Nick Ballinger, 48 on your side.
All right, thank you, Nick. So this is an extreme case, extreme situation, and it's a good time to explain renters' rights. In Alabama, you have a right to a safe, livable home that meets basic health and building codes, and that includes water. So if your rights are violated, you must keep a record of all these lease agreements, payments you've made, and all communications. That also includes text messages. That can count too. Send written notices for repairs and know your options, but don't withhold paying rent. We'll dive more deeply into that aspect. But joining me now, I want to introduce Michael Fortin. Michael is the Director of Advocacy for Legal Services in Alabama. And Michael and I go way back at this point, because when I was a new reporter to this area, renters' issues always bubble up to the surface. You met with the residents at Sutton Apartments. You were brought in to sort of offer some guidance. First, Michael, explain your role at Legal Services, what it is, what it does for residents throughout the state of Alabama, and your role in the Sutton Saga?
Sure. Well, Legal Services Alabama is a federally funded nonprofit. We help low-income people with legal problems, all 67 counties. We handle a bunch of different issues. Like for this case, obviously, we handle housing. And we really got involved with the Sutton last week. We got a call from an attorney in Madison who was familiar with the circumstances and just asked us if we would come up and meet with the people from the Sutton. So we met last Wednesday, met with about 20 folks, and 9 of them elected to sign up with Legal Services clients. So we now have 9 official clients that will be helping through the rest of this, and a couple of other folks who were trying to find private attorneys who were over our income because we only help low-income people.
That's right. That's an important key. And folks may reach out to you all because you all help low-income families. And I'm sure there is a screening process to figure out, okay, we truly can assist you all in this. But folks who may not be able to get that service, you are there to point them in the direction that they need to as well.
Yeah, and we're still weighing out the exact legal options, especially, I think, as everyone's aware, that the landlord doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of money. If you sue someone who's broke, it's sometimes you get what they have, which that's not a whole lot. But we work with private attorneys, too, to see there's also private attorneys who can collect fees for this sort of thing. So if we are going to file a suit, we may co-counsel with a private attorney who could represent the folks who we can't represent.
Face value, what's going on here?
Well, I mean,
Can you sum it up for people, because you just said the word broke. So is Lauren Real Estate truly broke? What is happening?
I mean, that's a complicated question, and obviously that, we probably will be filing some legal action to find out for sure. My investigation makes it appear that at least this particular piece of property, each of Lauren's properties is owned by a different corporation, a slightly different corporation with a different name. It's a number. This one's number 57. It appears they own this property, the Sutton, with no mortgage, which would mean that is something that if we were to sue, we'd be able to collect on. That's one of the things we're looking at. Because really, we don't want to drag tenants through a year and a half process and at the end of it not get anything. But we're optimistic at this point.
So there could be a lot of hands in this pot, for one, on the Lauren side. But them being based in Texas, I don't know. What I'm seeing and what I see from emails from residents, once we start digging into it, no one's local.
No.
We have these large, massive investment firms from out of state. And to me, it looks like they're just picking and choosing, buying up property all across Huntsville. They're probably going with the trend of we're seeing this growth, this boom in our area. Is that what you're seeing? Private investment firms, conglomerates just snatching up properties?
Well, I think that's a national trend. I mean, last 10, 20 years, there's been a lot of seminars telling people to get rich quick by either buying apartment complexes or mobile home parks, and basically, raising the rent, usually not making big improvements.
But that's the point, to
right.
buy them, improve them, and then make some money on the back end. But don't come in and make it worse for these residents.
I mean, that should be the point.
Right.
It's not really most of these businesses are not charities. They, from my experience, don't care a whole lot about the people. They're really just trying to make money. And, the way to make money is to spend less, get more. So,
have you ever seen a situation where a property owner goes MIA after not paying the water bill?
Oh, no, this is unique. I've been at Legal Services for combined at 2 different programs for over 20 years. I've never seen this particular problem, really, because it's hurting the landlord as well. I mean, having the water off, it damages the property. I mean, and obviously they're not going to get any more rent out of this. I think this is probably a systemic collapse at that corporation. I mean, obviously we've seen Legal Services. It's not uncommon that landlords turn the water off, but usually that's a non-payment of rent issue, which is also illegal.
Right.
But that's pretty common, unfortunately. The entire complex that's pretty rare. It's also pretty rare, though, honestly, that complexes pay the water bill. Usually that's an individual apartment by apartment thing. So why they chose to what we call master meter this entire apartment complex, I suppose it was probably just cheaper for them at the time rather than getting individual meters. but long-term is cost everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing that play out now. Now, I want to get into, because I have a list of questions that were submitted by our viewers either via email or on our Facebook page. Thank you for that, by the way, either Instagram too. A lot of people have questions, and I want to dive into, because this is the first thing I always tell folks. When they see issues pile up, and it starts small, right? It'll start with they were supposed to, I don't know, change fixtures or change the carpet. And then it could get to the extreme of there's mold in my home and I'm not going to pay rent. You see what I'll do. I'm not going to pay rent. And that's the first thing I tell them you cannot do. Explain why that's not the best route for a renter.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, the legislature in Alabama, when they adopted what's known as the Uniform Landlord-Tenant Act, which there's a organization that makes these uniform acts that states just can adopt, and it makes it a lot easier for legislatures. They don't have to go and research a lot. The Uniform Act actually has a provision by which you can withhold rent. Alabama took that provision and specifically wrote, they have their own unique statute only here in Alabama that says you can never withhold rent, just to make it very clear that there's never going to be a right to do that. So unfortunately, if you want to enforce your rights in Alabama, you have to keep paying your rent, which, if you go to court, the court system obviously takes months, if not sometimes years, and so you're just going to have to pay rent and suffer during that time.
So you forfeit your rights if you stop paying rent, but then at the same time, I keep paying rent and my landlord is doing nothing to help me. And then your option is to then, after you continue to pay rent and they're defaulting on whatever they were supposed to do, at that point, you think, okay, now I can just leave. But a lot of cases, when they call us, they don't have the money. They've been paying the rent. They don't have the money to leave. They don't have money to pay an additional deposit. And it's just frustrating at that point.
Well, and that's really why most states in America have one of two options. They either have repair and deduct, where the tenant goes and makes the repair themselves and deducts that amount from the rent.
Okay.
Or, you have the withholding, where you can either withhold on your own after giving notice to the landlord, or you can post with the court so that the money's safe there, and then sometimes they can use that money. Why Alabama has chosen the option of pay or move, really, those are the two options. And realistically, pay or move. And as you've said then, a lot of people don't have the first month security application fee, in addition to the fact that any future landlord's going to come back to this landlord and they don't realize that this landlord's not legitimate.
Right.
They just think it's a landlord. So it's really kind
So
of...
as a reference, they can say something bad about your reputation in paying, which could be totally false, but then you've now ruined my next option to leave you as a crooked or awful landlord and go somewhere else for my family.
I mean, the landlord in Alabama, they largely have most of the cards
in their hands.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's not terribly fair. I mean, this is really the reason why if a landlord asks me, how do I avoid problems? I say good screening, avoid tenants. And the same is also true for tenants. Like, investigate your landlord, look online, check reviews.
Ask people, pull up and knock on someone's door and ask a friendly neighbor and say, hey, do you like living here? That's a good one. I don't think people think of that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say if you go pull up the Sutton, they have pretty low reviews and have had low reviews for a long time.
Right,
so some of the folks might have known.
And that we're wading into another pool of cost of living at that point and what I can afford. And maybe it might have bad reviews, but that's what I can afford. But landlords still need to do their job to create a safe environment for their tenants.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and as you've noted, that the law requires it.
Right.
I mean, also simple decency requires it. And in the case of the Sutton, simple decency also could require that they at least answer questions or address these issues and let the tenants know what's going on.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that's a legal right as much as just like simple human decency.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. All right, so let's jump into a question from one of our viewers. Renewing lease agreements, are they allowed to raise the rent if no updates were made?
Largely, yes. If you have a lease for a term, and it's usually a year, at the end of that year, they both parties are largely allowed to contract. That's the way we would talk about it as lawyers. And so the landlord is allowed to ask for an increase. Some of that's going to be the cost of living. Like, inflation generally goes up. And so then it becomes the tenant's option. Do they want to move or pay the increase? I mean, and again, goes back to the landlords know. And if you go watch the seminars where they talk to landlords, they'll say most tenants don't have, they know what you know, which is they don't have the money to move. Mm-hmm. And so if it's unfair to raise the rent $100, but I don't have the $1,000 to relocate, they end up paying.
Right.
And it's kind of a unfortunate circle.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. Why can they come inside my apartment without permission constantly?
Well, they're not supposed to. Landlords are only able to enter apartments on 48 hours notice if they want to come in and inspect for some reason, or if they have a regularly published maintenance system. Yeah. So if they're going to come in to spray for pests or whatever, they can do that on a monthly basis without giving notice, as long as they've already told you ahead of time when they're going to do it. Otherwise, they have to give a 48 hours written notice. And the tenant actually has the right to sue them if they come in unnecessarily or without the 48 hours notice. But again, this is a great right on paper, but how many tenants are going to go down and pay for the filing fees to go to court, for, not always a whole lot of money for these types of cases. So, but legally they are not supposed to, you could talk to them about that.
Right. Here's another question. Is it legal for renters to pay utilities plus an extra fee for sewer and water?
That does go back to the contracting. The basic rule in Alabama is that you can contract for anything. The one thing the landlord is not supposed to do, they can charge a fee for water. They can, as they did at the Sutton. That theoretically was legal,
right,
until they shut it off. But the one thing they can't do is they can't charge a fee, and then if, say, you charge $75 for water, then they can't say, but if you go over, we're going to charge you the extra amount, because that technically becomes the sale of utilities, which is regulated by the government. So they can make whatever arrangements they want regarding the utilities, and it's really, again, I know that finding affordable housing is really difficult now, and that's a nice way for a landlord to hide an additional fee and get some more money, but technically it's legal.
Okay, there's your answer. Last question, Michael. And I know you have a legal mind, but maybe you can give me an overarching idea of where we're going, because you see all of the trends when it comes to renting in this new growing environment of the Tennessee Valley. Someone asked, why is rent so high when people aren't making more in cities like Rainsville, Fort Payne, and other smaller towns? Why is it so high?
I really think a lot of it goes to this investor class of folks coming in and buying property. When I arrived in Huntsville in 2007, almost all of the property was locally owned and operated. I mean, there was a local landlord. You knew
who it was.
Well,
you could go and see them.
Yeah, you could find not only the manager, but the owner was local.
Right.
And quite often, the big difference there is if the owner's local, an owner has an obligation to keep things safe, sanitary, because legally they're supposed to, but they also have a financial interest in doing that. They want to keep their property, keep it up to standards, because they want to be able to sell it eventually. Right. It's an asset. So why is the rent is going to go up as people are just looking to make profits? And we've all seen all of the buildings, all of the
construction,
all over town.
Yeah,
it's booming.
The market should right itself at some point, though, right?
I mean,
people have to find a place to live at some point.
I mean, I don't think we're going anywhere near the trend of San Francisco or anything like that, but there's a lot of cities in America where there just is zero affordable housing. And, that's when you get folks driving an hour into town just to be able to come and work. I don't think Huntsville's there or going to be there anytime soon. But certainly affordability is a huge issue. as far as anything that would be affordable public housing or anything like that, that just seems to keep decreasing. I mean, the government has capped how much they're spending, so every year the number of units goes down. So like, as there's more and more people needing affordable housing, there's less and less affordable housing, which,
Supply and demand.
yeah.
Michael, really, really good advice. How can people reach out to you? And it's not just you. You have a whole team under you with legal services, and it isn't also just tenant issues that you all help and assist folks with.
Sure. The easiest way to do is to go to legalservicesalabama.org. There you have all of your options. They have all of the hotlines to call, as well as an online intake. And you can also walk into your local office. Here in Huntsville, it's down on Commerce Street, across from Whole Foods. So
there you go. Michael, I appreciate your time this evening to answer some of these pressing questions. I hope you got some value out of it and got some good information. We will continue to follow this story. We'll follow any story. If you have a tenant issue or a landlord issue on the reverse, we want to hear your story. Reach out to us. Email our newsroom. It's news@waff.com. You can call our newsroom, 256-533-NEWS. Very easy. So reach out to WAFF. That's what we mean when we're on your side. Thank you for joining us for this streaming special. I'll see you tonight at 10. Thank you.